Every grandmother who kept house in the 1970s had a shelf of things a modern kitchen would throw out on sight. A stoneware crock of sauerkraut she fermented herself, a bar of soap she made from bacon grease, a cast-iron skillet she seasoned with lard every Sunday. By the 1990s, nearly every one of those things had been pushed aside, replaced by factory-made alternatives wrapped in plastic and marketing. The sauerkraut gave way to pasteurized jars off a shelf. The soap was buried under a wall of synthetic body wash. The skillet lost to non-stick cookware coated in chemicals we are only now learning to pronounce. One by one, her tricks disappeared from American kitchens, and every single one of them turned out to be right. So hit subscribe, because here are 30 forgotten 1970s household tricks that scientists now say were genius. Number 30. White vinegar as a household cleaner. Every kitchen in the 1970s had a gallon jug of distilled white vinegar under the sink, and your mother used it on everything. Countertops, windows, the coffee maker, the bathroom mirror. It cost almost nothing and left no residue. Then the cleaning product industry spent 2 decades convincing American families that you needed a separate registered chemical for every surface in the house. Specialized sprays for glass, specialized sprays for granite, specialized sprays for stainless steel. By the time the aisle had 30 options, nobody remembered that one jug handled all of them. But a 5% acetic acid solution, the concentration you buy at any grocery store, kills most common household bacteria on contact, including Salmonella and E. coli. No fumes, no warning labels, no batteries. Your mother's entire cleaning budget was a gallon of vinegar and a roll of paper towels, and it outperformed the whole aisle. Number 29. Phosphate laundry detergent. If you did laundry in the early 1970s, you used Tide or Fab or Whisk, all loaded with phosphates. Your whites came out blinding, your colors stayed bright, and the soap rinsed clean. Then regulators found phosphates were feeding massive algae blooms in rivers and lakes, and by 1972, state after state pulled them from detergent. The companies reformulated overnight, and anyone who lived through it remembers what happened next. Whites turned gray, and the new soap left a sticky film on everything. It took nearly 20 years to develop enzyme formulas that came close to matching what phosphates did naturally. The restrictions were necessary, but the cleaning power was real, and nothing since has matched it. Number 28. Borax as a pest killer. Your grandmother kept a box of 20 Mule Team borax in the pantry, and when the roaches showed up, she sprinkled a thin line of it along the baseboards and behind the refrigerator. No aerosol spray, no chemical fog, no exterminator billing by the hour. The roaches walked through it, carried the powder back to the nest on their legs, and within a week, they were gone. Over the decades, borax quietly disappeared from the pest control conversation. Hardware stores pushed chemical spray cans and professional treatments instead, and the old powder slipped to the back of the shelf. The European Union restricted consumer sales entirely, but borax disrupts insect digestive systems at concentrations far too low to pose a meaningful risk to humans or household pets. It is less acutely toxic than table salt by weight. Your grandmother's method was not just cheaper than calling the exterminator, it was genuinely safer than most of the commercial alternatives that replaced it. Number 27. Homemade lye soap. There was a time when making your own soap was not a craft fair hobby. It was how you kept your family clean. Your grandmother saved every drop of bacon grease in a coffee can by the stove, mixed it with lye she bought at the hardware store, and poured it into wooden molds on the back porch. That soap stripped grease from work clothes, cleaned dishes, and left your skin smooth without any lotion afterward. Then, commercial soap companies filled every shelf with synthetic detergent bars wrapped in plastic and scented with chemicals. The old recipes stopped being passed down. Homemade soap became something your grandmother used to do, a relic from before the supermarket aisle offered 40 choices. But dermatology research now confirms that simple tallow and lye soap preserves the skin's natural lipid barrier far better than most synthetic detergent bars, which strip oils and rely on added moisturizers to compensate for the damage they cause. Number 26. Drying your laundry on a clothesline. You remember the sound of bed sheets snapping in the wind, the stiff crunch of a sun-dried towel against your face, the way your pillowcase smelled after spending all afternoon in the July heat. Every backyard in America had a clothesline strung between two metal poles, and nobody thought of it as anything except how you dried clothes. Then the electric dryer became affordable, and homeowner associations in suburb after suburb classified outdoor clotheslines as eyesores. The lines came down, the poles rusted. Within a generation, the whole practice vanished from most American neighborhoods. But direct ultraviolet sunlight kills bacteria on fabric more effectively than any residential tumble dryer ever made. The sun bleaches stains naturally, extends the life of your clothing, and runs on nothing but weather. The vanished eyesore turned out to be the better machine. Number 25. Burning leaves in the yard for garden ash. Every autumn in the 1970s, the whole neighborhood smelled like smoke. Your father raked the leaves into a pile at the edge of the yard, lit a match, and stood there with a garden hose just in case. By morning, he had a bucket of fine gray ash, and by spring, it was mixed into the garden soil alongside the tomato plants and pepper rows. Then the Clean Air Act and a wave of municipal burn restrictions made the practice disappear across most of the country. Yard waste went into plastic bags and off to the landfill instead. But soil science has established that wood and leaf ash is one of the richest natural sources of potassium, calcium, and magnesium available to home gardeners. It raises soil pH for acid-sensitive crops, improves drainage in clay soils, and repels slugs and snails on contact. Your father was not polluting the neighborhood. He was manufacturing premium fertilizer for free. Number 24. Collecting rainwater off the roof. Your grandfather had a wooden barrel under the downspout, and every time it rained, he collected free water for the vegetable garden, the flower beds, and the dog bowl. It was the most obvious thing in the world. Then Western water law caught up with him. Under a legal doctrine called prior appropriation, several states decided that rainwater belonged to downstream water rights holders the moment it fell from the sky. Colorado and Utah made residential collection illegal. You could be fined for putting a 5-gallon bucket under your own gutter on your own property. The practice went from common sense to legal liability almost overnight, and most families simply stopped. Meanwhile, water conservation research confirms that residential rainwater harvesting reduces demand on municipal systems, decreases stormwater runoff that causes erosion, and provides naturally soft, chlorine-free water that gardens prefer over treated tap. Your grandfather was not stealing water. He was practicing conservation before anyone invented the word for it. Number 23. Composting kitchen scraps in the backyard. Every house had a spot somewhere near the garden where the coffee grounds, eggshells, banana peels, and apple cores went to decompose. Your mother called it the pile. Nobody called it composting. It was just where the scraps went. Then the suburbs got particular. Homeowner associations classified open compost as a nuisance. Some municipalities required sealed bins with locking lids, setbacks from the property line, and sometimes a permit. The simple pile became a hassle nobody wanted to deal with, and most families quietly stopped. But aerobic composting, when managed with a basic balance of greens and browns, produces no meaningful pest attraction and generates one of the most effective soil amendments a home gardener can use. It improves soil structure, retains moisture, and delivers slow-release nutrients without synthetic fertilizer. Your family was not creating a health hazard out by the fence. They were building topsoil from garbage. Number 22. Keeping chickens in the backyard. The sound of a hen clucking behind somebody's garage was background noise in most small towns in the 1960s and 1970s. Maybe the neighbor 3 doors down with a few Rhode Island Reds in a wire pen by the garden. The eggs showed up on the table every morning, still warm, and the chickens ate every tick, beetle, and grub in the yard. Then the zoning laws tightened, and one by one American municipalities reclassified residential neighborhoods as poultry-free zones. By the early 1990s, most suburbs had restricted residential poultry. You could keep a dog that barked all night, but 3 quiet hens behind your garage were against the rules. The reversal has been striking. Backyard flocks give natural pest control, high nitrogen fertilizer, and eggs richer in omega-3s and vitamin E than store eggs. The urban farming movement is rewriting those codes city by city. Your neighbor with the Rhode Island Reds was not breaking the rules. The rules had not caught up with common sense. Number 21. Open kettle home canning. Your grandmother stood over a boiling pot on the stove, ladled tomato sauce directly into sterilized mason jars, flipped the lids on, and let them seal as they cooled on the counter. That satisfying pop of each lid sucking down meant the vacuum had set, and that jar was good for a year in the cellar. She did peaches, green beans, preserves, and pickled beets the same way. Dozens of jars lined up on the kitchen counter every August. Then the United States Department of Agriculture removed the open kettle method from all approved home canning guidelines. Extension services stopped teaching it. The only methods they recommended were pressure canning and the boiling water bath. Within a generation, the open kettle technique vanished from American kitchens. But the method, when performed with proper sanitation on high-acid foods like tomatoes and fruit, creates a reliable anaerobic seal. Generations preserved millions of jars this way without incident. The technique was not dangerous, it was simply forgotten. Number 20. Oil-based house paint. The bathroom your father painted in 1973 got a coat of oil-based enamel. The fumes could knock you sideways if you forgot to open the window. But that finish was like glass. It resisted moisture, repelled mildew, and lasted for years without chipping, cracking, or peeling. You painted a room with oil-based enamel and you did not touch it again for a decade. Then volatile organic compound regulations swept the country and state after state restricted oil-based interior paints. The replacement was water-based latex that went on easy, dried fast, and started bubbling in humid bathrooms within a couple of years. Professional painters noticed the difference on the first job. Homeowners noticed it on the second paint job they never should have needed. Building science confirms that oil-based coatings form a harder, more moisture-resistant film than most latex alternatives can achieve. The air quality regulations were sensible, but nobody ever pretended the replacement was an upgrade. Number 19. Hanging meat and fish to air dry at home. Before vacuum sealers and chest freezers, there was the shed out back where your grandfather hung strips of venison on a wire, rubbed them heavy with coarse salt and black pepper, and let the cold October air do the rest. The jerky came out dark and chewy and tasted like wood smoke in winter, and he dried trout the same way, split open and strung on hooks in the garage. Then, health regulations drew a line, requiring all meat processing in licensed, inspected facilities, and even the personal practice fell out of use within a generation. But controlled air drying with the right salt concentration is one of the oldest and most effective preservation methods known. Salt inhibits bacterial growth, steady airflow prevents spoilage, and it produces shelf-stable protein without a single watt of electricity. Number 18. Putting raw honey on cuts and burns. When you scraped your knee on the sidewalk, your grandmother did not reach for the Bactine. She went straight for the honey jar, smeared a thick golden layer over the scrape, and wrapped it with a clean cloth. The other mothers on the street thought she was behind the times. Doctors dismissed it as folk superstition. Pharmacies stocked nothing that did not come in a sealed tube with clinical trial data on the label. The honey jar stayed in the kitchen where it belonged, and within a generation the old trick simply faded out of practice. But wound care specialists today use medical-grade Manuka honey in burn units and surgical wards around the world. Honey creates a naturally acidic, moisture-rich environment that promotes tissue repair while generating low levels of hydrogen peroxide that kill bacteria on the wound surface. Hospitals are now paying for what your grandmother spread on your knee for free from the jar on the kitchen counter. Number 17. A daily spoonful of cod liver oil. You remember that bottle? Brown glass, sitting on the counter next to the toaster, smelling like the inside of a fishing boat closed up all summer. Every morning before school, your mother held out a tablespoon and you swallowed it as fast as you could, trying not to taste it twice. By the late 1970s, synthetic multivitamins that tasted like orange candy had taken over the market. Pediatricians moved on, and the cod liver oil disappeared within a generation, not because it was dangerous, but because something easier came along. But cod liver oil is one of the most concentrated natural sources of vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids that exists, and most Americans today are deficient in both. Your mother was not punishing you. She was protecting your whole body with a single spoonful of something that cost less than a candy bar. Number 16. Fermenting sauerkraut and pickles at home. In your grandmother's kitchen, there was always a stoneware crock on the counter with a plate weighted down by a river rock, shredded cabbage slowly turning into sauerkraut, the smell sharp and sour and unmistakable. She made pickles the same way. Cucumbers packed in salt brine with dill and garlic, left to ferment until the bubbling stopped. No vinegar, just salt, patience, and whatever beneficial bacteria the air delivered. Then the grocery store took over. Shelves of pasteurized, vinegar-pickled vegetables replaced the slow process, and within a generation, most families had forgotten the technique. But microbiome research has established that naturally fermented vegetables are among the most potent sources of living probiotics available, supporting digestion and immune response. That crock was doing more for her family than the entire vitamin aisle at the pharmacy. Number 15. Heating your home with a wood-burning stove. Half the homes in rural America heated with wood in the 1970s, and you remember the morning ritual: crumpling newspaper, stacking kindling in a pyramid, lighting the match and waiting for the cast iron to tick as it warmed. The whole house smelled like oak and pine, and the warmth pressed against your face from across the room. Then natural gas furnaces and electric heat became the standard. Emissions regulations pushed the old cast iron stoves out of production, and central heating replaced zone heating. But modern certified wood stoves burn at efficiencies above 80% with minimal particulate output, and the fuel is carbon neutral when harvested from managed woodlands. Heating only the room you are sitting in cuts energy waste dramatically compared to running a whole house system. The wood pile was never the problem. Number 14. Stuffing your walls with old newspapers for insulation. This one sounds reckless today, and your fire marshal would have plenty to say about it. But from the 1940s into the 1960s, builders and homeowners across America routinely packed crumpled newspaper into wall cavities and attic floors to keep the cold out. It was free, it was everywhere, and it worked. Anyone who has gutted an old farmhouse knows the cascade of yellowed newsprint that tumbles out, headlines pressed flat between the studs for decades. Fire codes eventually prohibited it for good reason, since loose paper in a wall is a combustion hazard. But the insulation industry's most popular retrofit product today is blown-in cellulose, which is shredded recycled newspaper treated with borat for fire resistance, with nearly identical thermal performance. The difference between what your grandfather did for free in 1958 and what a contractor charges thousands for is a fire-retardant treatment and a blowing machine. Number 13. Opening every window in the house for cross-ventilation. Your parents did not have central air conditioning. What they had was a system. Open the windows on the shady side, close the ones in direct sun, put a box fan in the upstairs hallway blowing outward, and let the pressure difference pull cooler air through the whole first floor. It took 10 minutes to set up and drop the indoor temperature on all but the worst summer days. Then, central air became affordable, builders started sealing homes tight for mechanical cooling, and cross-ventilation was quietly engineered out of residential design. But the World Health Organization now emphasizes that natural ventilation reduces indoor airborne pathogens, volatile organic compounds, and allergens far more effectively than recirculated mechanical air. Your parents understood how air moves through a building better than the engineers who sealed your house shut. Number 12. Burning household trash in a backyard barrel. There was a 55-gallon steel drum at the back of the property, rusted around the rim, and once a week your father tossed in the paper, the cardboard, the broken things nobody could fix, struck a match, and let it burn down to a few inches of gray ash. That ash went straight on the garden. Municipal burn restrictions ended the practice across the country, and the reasons were legitimate. Open burning produces particulate matter, and mixed waste can release toxic compounds from plastics and treated materials. But the core principle, reducing organic waste volume through controlled combustion, is exactly what modern pyrolysis research explores at industrial scale today. Engineers are building systems that convert paper, wood, and organic material into biochar and recoverable energy using the same thermochemical reaction your father performed every Saturday with a steel drum and a book of matches. He was 50 years ahead of the waste-to-energy curve. Number 11. Kerosene space heaters for zone heating. That blue flame perfection heater in the hallway was the reason you could walk to the bathroom at 2 in the morning without your teeth chattering. You smelled the kerosene before you saw the glow, and the warmth hit you from 6 feet away like opening an oven door. 1 gallon of fuel kept it burning for 10 or 12 hours, and it heated exactly the space you needed, nothing more, without firing up the furnace for the whole house. Then, building codes in most states restricted unvented kerosene heaters in residential buildings, citing carbon monoxide buildup and fire risk. The heaters disappeared from American homes almost entirely within a decade. But energy engineers acknowledge that zone heating, warming only the room you occupy instead of conditioning the entire house, is one of the most effective strategies to reduce residential energy consumption. Modern vented portable heaters operate well within safety standards. The principle your family relied on every winter night was never the problem. The ventilation was. Number 10. Brewing herbal teas as household medicine. Your grandmother's answer to a cold was chamomile. When you could not sleep, it was valerian root steeped dark. When the flu hit in January, she boiled elderberries into a syrup so thick it stuck to the spoon. Nobody went to the pharmacy first. The kitchen was the pharmacy. Then, modern medicine and the pharmaceutical industry took over the conversation entirely. Doctors prescribed pills. Pharmacies multiplied on every corner. Anything without a clinical trial and a barcode got pushed to the fringes of the health food store and eventually off most kitchen counters. The old herbal remedies did not get disproven. They just got drowned out by louder, more expensive alternatives. But active compounds in many of those plants have since been confirmed in controlled research. Chamomile contains apigenin, a compound with documented calming effects. Elderberry has shown antiviral activity in clinical trials. Your grandmother's teas were never just hot water and wishful thinking. Number 9. Rubbing turpentine on your chest for a cold. Ask anyone who grew up in the rural South or the Midwest and they will nod before you finish the sentence. A small amount of turpentine rubbed on the chest and throat, covered with a warm flannel cloth, was the standard home treatment for congestion in millions of American households. Your grandmother did not think twice about it. Vicks VapoRub originally contained turpentine in its formula before the company quietly reformulated and dropped the ingredient decades ago. Once the biggest brand moved on, the home remedy lost its last mainstream endorsement, and a generation of parents simply stopped passing it down. The practice faded into memory. But the active compounds in turpentine, called terpenes, are the exact same class of molecules found in eucalyptus oil, pine needle extract, and tea tree oil. They possess documented anti-inflammatory and bronchodilatory properties that open airways and reduce mucus buildup. Your grandmother was using the original full-strength version of what they now dilute, rebrand, and sell you in a smaller jar for 10 times the price. Number 8. Storing food in a root cellar. If your grandparents had a farmhouse, they almost certainly had one, a small room dug into the hillside or a chamber beneath the kitchen floor with a heavy door that scraped when you pulled it open. The air inside stayed cool and damp year-round, between 35 and 50 degrees, without a single wire running to it. Your grandmother kept potatoes down there for months without sprouting, apples into February, carrots in damp sand until spring, the shelves lined with mason jars of tomatoes and preserves. Then modern construction pushed them out. Codes required mechanical refrigeration, health rules classified underground storage as a violation, and insurers refused to cover homes that relied on them. But a properly built root cellar holds ideal humidity and temperature without consuming any energy, and preserves nutrition better than a refrigerator that cycles on and off. Your grandparents owned the most efficient cold storage ever designed, and the only thing it ran on was the earth itself. Number 7. Treating your home for termites with chlordane. Your family bought a house in the 1970s, and the exterminator showed up with a drill and a pressurized tank. He bored small holes around the entire foundation perimeter and pumped chlordane into the soil until it soaked through. The termites died, every last one, and they stayed dead for decades because chlordane simply did not break down in the ground. That permanence was its greatest strength and eventually its undoing. The Environmental Protection Agency pulled chlordane from residential use in 1988, citing persistence in soil and potential long-term health effects. Nothing since has come close. Modern termite management relies on baiting systems, liquid barriers that degrade within a few years, and ongoing inspection contracts that cost homeowners thousands over a lifetime. Pest management professionals acknowledge that chlordane was the most effective termiticide ever manufactured. Homes treated in the 1970s remain termite-free today, half a century later. No product on the market can make that claim. Number 6. Pouring used bath and sink water on the garden. Your mother did not see dirty water going down the drain. She saw the garden getting watered for free. After dishes or a bath, she hauled buckets out to the flower beds and the tomatoes. Some families ran a hose from the washing machine drain straight to the backyard. Nobody called it gray water recycling. They called it not wasting water. Then plumbing codes drew a firm line. In most states, all residential wastewater had to flow to a municipal sewer or an approved septic tank. Diverting it to your yard became a code violation, and the practice disappeared from most neighborhoods within a decade. But lightly used household water from sinks, showers, and laundry is perfectly safe for landscape irrigation when it does not contain bleach or harsh chemicals. It cuts total household water consumption and delivers mild nutrients to the soil. Your mother was recycling water decades before the sustainability movement gave it a name. Number 5. The mercury thermometer. You remember your mother shaking it down with a sharp flick of her wrist before sliding it under your tongue. Keep your mouth closed. Do not bite down. Wait 3 full minutes. The silver line crept up slowly, and when time was up, she held it to the light and read your temperature to the 10th of a degree. That thermometer lived in the medicine cabinet for 20 years without ever needing a battery or a replacement. States began restricting mercury thermometers from retail sale in the early 2000s, and today you cannot buy one in most of the country. The concern was mercury exposure if the glass broke, and the caution was understandable. But precision measurement confirms that mercury in glass thermometers remain the most accurate fever-reading instruments ever produced for home use. Digital thermometers can fluctuate by a full degree depending on battery level and placement. Your mother's glass tube gave the same reading every single time. Accuracy was never the issue. Number 4. Selling homemade baked goods to the neighbors. Every block in America had someone who baked pies for the church supper, cookies for the school fundraiser, a cake for every birthday within walking distance, and some sold a little on the side. A couple of dollars for a pie, $1 for a loaf of banana bread left on your porch with a handwritten note. The whole street knew her by name. Then, state regulations tightened. Selling food from an unlicensed home kitchen became illegal in most jurisdictions, and the cottage food tradition dried up almost overnight. But home-baked goods present an extremely low risk of foodborne illness because high baking temperatures and sugar-rich, low-moisture environments make it nearly impossible for harmful bacteria to survive. Today, over 40 states have passed cottage food laws again. It took regulators 4 decades to arrive at what every neighbor already knew. Number 3. Drinking raw, unpasteurized milk. Before the dairy industry consolidated into a handful of national brands, your family might have gotten milk from the farm down the road. It came in a glass bottle with cream floating on top, and it tasted nothing like what you pour from a plastic gallon today. Thicker, sweeter, with a richness that pasteurization strips away entirely. Then the federal government and most state health departments restricted the retail sale of raw milk, citing contamination risk from pathogens like Listeria and Salmonella. The restrictions hold in most states to this day. You can own a cow and drink the milk, but you cannot legally sell a glass of it to your neighbor in most of the country. But microbiome research has found that unpasteurized milk contains beneficial bacteria, active enzymes, and immunoglobulins that pasteurization destroys. European observational studies have linked childhood raw milk consumption to reduced rates of asthma and allergies. The science is no longer one-sided. The milk your grandparents drank was not just fresher. It was a completely different food. Number 2. Cooking everything in a cast iron skillet. Your grandmother's skillet was black, heavy, and slick as glass from decades of seasoning. She fried eggs, baked cornbread, and seared pork chops in it, and never once used soap to clean it. Just a quick scrape, a thin coat of lard, and back on the burner to set. That pan was the most important tool in her kitchen, and the animal fat was what kept it working. Then, the 1977 dietary goals told Americans to stop cooking with saturated fat, the lard went in the trash, and the cookware industry was ready with Teflon-coated aluminum pans that needed no seasoning at all. Today, those non-stick coatings are known to release and polyfluoroalkyl substances, the forever chemicals now found in the blood of virtually every American. Cast iron releases nothing but trace dietary iron. Your grandmother's heavy black skillet was never the problem. The replacement was. Number 1. Cooking with lard and tallow instead of margarine. This is the biggest reversal on the entire list. For most of the 20th century, American families cooked with animal fat, lard for pie crusts and frying, tallow for the roasting pan. It was cheap, abundant, and everything tasted better for it. Then the vegetable oil industry, backed by the American Heart Association and federal dietary guidelines, convinced the country that saturated animal fat was killing them, and by the 1980s, cooking with it was treated as ignorance. The science has completely reversed. The trans fats in margarine and shortening are directly linked to heart disease and stroke, and the World Health Organization has called for their global elimination. Lard and tallow are stable at high heat, contain zero trans fats, and deliver fat-soluble vitamins margarine never could. Your grandmother's cooking fat was never the enemy. The replacement was. If anything in this video brought back a memory, drop it in the comments. Tell us which trick your family actually used and which one on this list surprised you the most. If you know someone who grew up in the 1970s, share this video with them because they will recognize every single one of these. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this. Thanks for watching.